Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway, and in this episode, I'll be completing my Skate America coverage with the men's event. This event was won by Ilya Malinin, and that was no surprise. This is his third Skate America win in a row. It was perhaps not as dominant a win as he would have liked. Had a few issues in both of his programs here. In the short program, he had a little step out of his quad flip, which he has added back into his short program last year. He did not do the quad flip because he said it aggravated his hip, but it is fully back into his programs. He did it both at Lombardia and here. Also, his triple axel was a little bit scratchy with that free leg. Of course, he had a big quad lutz triple toe combo in the second half. Big point getter for him. You can tell he really likes this program. He gets into it so much. I mean, he gets into both of his programs, but I can tell that he really likes this one for sure. Didn't seem very happy about his score, though. It's the first time I think we've seen him score below 100 points in a while, but he did have the big mistake on the quadruple flip. And then in the free skate, he started off really strong. Quad flip, triple axel, quad lutz, and then he popped his quadruple loop and just ended up having a double loop there. He ended up having a step out on his triple lutz Euler combo, which it looked like he stepped out of the Euler, not out of the lutz, but he got negative GOE on that. Of course, then he followed it up with the quad toe, triple toe, and a quad Salchow triple axel, which I feel like is an upgrade on what he was doing. Last year, I felt like it was like a triple lutz, triple axel, I think is what he did at Lombardia. At Worlds, he might have done something like insane, like a quad lutz triple axel or something crazy like that. He is definitely going to do all 6 quads at some point. He didn't do the quad axel here. Didn't see him do it in practice at all either. But he's got all the quads in here. The flip, the lutz, the loop, the toe, and the Salchow. And that triple axel clearly is designed to be a placeholder for the quad axel. Now, he might switch up the jump layout because usually if he does the quad axel, he does it off the bat. But that is clearly in his plan this season. Also, potentially might be a quint in his future. So Nick with NBC asked Ilya about a quintuple jump in the press conference after the short program. He said he had heard that he had landed a quint and he wanted Ilya to confirm if he had landed it with or without a harness. Ilya said, "I'm not ready to talk about that right now." And I thought that was going to be the end of the conversation, but he did elaborate a little bit and said basically that since they now have scores for the quints, that it kind of starts that conversation. But he said he had already been thinking about it for a while and that it is promising and look for it next season, which is crazy to think about it. Which then they kind of wanted to know what did the other two think, and that was Nika Agazzi and Cal Mura, who were in the top 3 after the short program. Cal Mura basically said that I tried it once and I feared for my life. But he said that Ilya could do it, and he felt like having the scores for quints is basically brought on by Ilya's ability to do the quad axel. They asked Nika, same thing. Nika said that he couldn't do it, that it requires a higher jump and faster rotation, and that Ilya, he feels like, could do it. And that he says, I will try it maybe on my last day of my figure skating career, and maybe I go to hospital, he said. So sorry for the radio silence. It's crazy to think that we could potentially see 5 revolutions. I don't even know how I feel about seeing 5 revolutions. But Ilya definitely, which should surprise none of us, both him and Cal basically said that Ilya could do it, that he has enough height and enough rotation to be able to do it. Cal said the same thing that Nika did. And I think we all kind of agree. The question then becomes, okay, if Ilya lands a quint next season, do other people feel like they need to now work on a quint, or are they just going to be like, you know what, Ilya is a unicorn? And none of us are also going to try that. And it's crazy because Cal also said after the short program that, talking about Ilya, he is God, what can I say? I know I am not an equal opponent, which I'm just like, oh, Cal. And it's very similar to what we heard Yuma say after Worlds. Like, I can't compete with what he's doing right now. Now, Elia looked very mortal here. He had some mistakes in both programs. He did not reach 300 points in his free skate total. So everyone is beatable on any single given day, but it is clear that his competitors have so much respect for what he is doing and how he is pushing the sport. And I love that we continue to see improvements in his skating skills, in the way that he uses his arms, even in between moves. All of these things are huge improvements. And I know people still fuss about the scores that he gets for his PCS. But it's not like he won PCS in the free skate. That went to our second place competitor, who surprisingly, Kevin Amoyz. So I will say, in all of the disciplines, I think I was very off in my medal predictions, with the exception of men. I actually correctly predicted the top three. I didn't correct them in the correct order. I had Cal getting second and Amoyz getting third, but I did actually get something in the neighborhood of being right. And so many people really had low expectations of Kevin. And frankly, I felt like I was being maybe overly optimistic based on what we had seen from him even just a few weeks ago at a domestic competition. But here he is in vintage Kevin has returned. He had good practices. The first day I was a little worried because I didn't see him do a lot of jumps. And even like the second day of practices, I was like, he's doing a lot of doubles. He's doing a lot of skating around. But eventually, as the practice went on, he started doing triples and then triple axel and then quads. And I'm like, okay, what Kevin is going to show up Friday night? Like, good Kevin, please, good Kevin. And he started off with that quad toe. He hung on to it, and it just got a double toe off instead of a triple toe. Totally fine. We're okay with that. Triple axel, clean. Triple lutz. I mean, every jumping pass, he was just goading the crowd. He was wagging his finger at him, give me the little come here. He was completely a total ham out there, and the crowd was just completely eating it up the whole time. A lot of confidence. I don't know what goes in Kevin's head at all from competition to competition, because like last year at Skate America, got the silver medal there also, was brilliant. Can he keep this up, though, is the question. Like, I feel like we see this Kevin in the Grand Prix, and then when Grand Prix final comes around, and Europeans comes around, and Worlds comes around, it's not this Kevin. And there was some mention post one of his performances about maybe getting some criticism about keeping Sylvia Fontana as his coach, and all of the controversy that her and John Zimmerman were embroiled in with the Morgan Cypres drama. And I don't know if that has affected him as well. The thing about it is Kevin has been on and off for a while. And so even before all of that, he would be inconsistent. So it's not, that could be the source of the most current breakdown, but it certainly hasn't been the source of the breakdowns that we have seen over the years. But I was excited to see Kevin at his best in the short program. And then in the free skate, he pulled out the absolute best free skate of his career, personal best for him, scoring 190 points. He actually won the free skate by just a hair over Elia. Came out, did a quad toe, double toe, quad toe, triple axel, double axel. And at that point, you knew it was going to be something special. He had a nice break in the middle with a step sequence before he kind of ramped up again, did this nice modified Ina Bauer into a triple axel. The whole program didn't feel like 4 minutes. If you didn't have chills, I want to make sure that you still have a pulse because it was incredible. And it's like we also got the return of super emotional Kevin too, because 2 years ago at Europeans, he was coming back from injury. That's the year he was doing the Gladiator program. And every single competition, it was just like tears. Him and Sylvia both were tears. Here, he like got up, he ran off the platform, and came back, and the kiss and cry after he got his scores, tears, just the whole thing. I was just so happy to see it, and I think most everybody else was too. And we just want to see it all season, even if he, he's not going to go out and perform this way every time, right? But like, can there be like a middle ground between 190 points and 100 points in the free skate, right? Like, it does it always have to be like a boom or bust? All right, we'll see. In third place was Kalmura of Japan. And this was also like the best competition of his career in terms of his total score was a personal best, and that was largely helped by his short program. Before I talk about his programs, though, a very important note is he is battling an injury. When I was watching his practices, I was really concerned that is he going to withdraw because he might land a beautiful quad and then do 5 jumps in a row where he pops. And then you might have 2 just awful falls. And it was clear watching his practices that he was injured. The thing about it is he would get better as the practice would go along. Like the practices, they were very short. They're like 30, 40 minutes at a time. But, maybe 20 minutes into it, he would start to land some of the jumps that he was struggling with the entire, practice. And so after the short program, somebody asked him about his injury. And he said that he actually has had the injury since 4 continents in like 2022, like 2 years ago. Probably, he says 2 years ago. He probably means 2023 when he won, I'm thinking, is what he means by 2 years ago. And he said it started acting up again at Lombardia and that the pain has just not subsided at all. So he said there was a trainer, the competition, they gave him some kind of in-competition care and told him that he needed to keep his temperature up, like even when he's asleep, just try to keep it warm as much as possible. And even with the injury and the crazy practices that he had, he came out in the short program. He looked so calm and so composed. And he is usually just like chaos on skates, just frenetic energy, can't control it. And it was like a totally different Cal than what I can remember seeing from him. His quad Salchow triple toe was clean with the tons of speed, clean triple axel. And I just want him to like bottle up whatever he did and do it again next time. The quad toe in the second half was also fantastic. I was certain he was going to get 100 for the first time in his career. And he got a 99.54. And I was like, really? Turns out he got a Q call on his triple axel. And that was why he didn't get 100. So close for him. And he was second after the short program. In the free skate, still had a really fantastic, again, I felt like this was probably the second best skate of his career. The best skate of his career is his personal best, which is his 2023 free skate at 4 continents to Beauty and the Beast. Was finally a clean program for him in the craziness with the altitude. Travesty that he wasn't at Worlds that year, but I've already been on that soapbox many times on the podcast. Here, he's skating to Umbrellas of Sharpsburg. Felt like he had a different shirt than what he had at Lombardia. I like that he opens with the triple axel Euler triple sow, because a lot of times most of the men open up right with a quad, so I just like to see something just a little bit different. And technically, he was just so good. 3 quads, 2 triple axles, but he had some costly calls that basically is what put him behind Kevin and knocked him down to bronze. And that was, he got a Q on his quad toe. The second one that he did, he got an undercall on the triple axle, so worse than what he got in the short program. That was the second one that he did, not the one that was in the Euler combo. He got a level 2 on a step sequence, and he had 2 level 3 spins. And so on the world feed, Ted Barton was saying that he feels like he needs more flexibility in his hips to get lower into the spins to get a higher level on those spins. But I do believe that the hip is where he's injured. And so it just may not be in his capability right now to get higher level spins. That is something that he has struggled with last season as well, but definitely might be more of a hindrance for him right now with the injury. I hope that he's able to get that under control. It's scary to me when people say that the pain hasn't subsided, because then my question is, should you even be skating? But he looked like there was no pain at all in these two performances here. In fourth place was Nika Agazzi of Georgia. And again, this was probably the best competition of his career. In his short program, he went out and skated quad salchow, triple toe, quad toe, and a triple axel. Everything was clean. The only thing was maybe he had a little stumble in his footwork sequence. This short program is the same program that Andrew Torgashev used last season and is repeating again this year. Andrew Torgashev definitely does it better than Nika Agazzi does, but it's competent. I mean, it's a fine program. In the free skate, he is skating to music from the Oppenheimer soundtrack. And he starts off with a quad lutz, which is a new jump for him for what I can remember. I don't remember him doing this before, and I could be wrong. He did fall on that element, but he got right back and landed a quad toe, quad salchow. He did turn out of his second quad salchow, but the program is decent. I mean, it obviously pales in comparison to the other skaters that were in the top 5 here. And frankly, he's not likely to grow as a skater with the current coaching team that he has. Terry Tuperitsa and Sergei Dudikov. I mean, they're not well known for developing great artistes, right? They're known for jumping. And I don't know that they're real big on bringing in outside choreographers. And I don't know what outside choreographers are really big on working with the Terry Tuperitsa and her team either. So, like, for instance, he does like an Ina Bauer at some point in his program, and it's not a great attempt. And there's so many other competitors doing really fantastic ones. Like, I would do something else, but he should be really proud of what he put out here in this competition. In fifth place was Denis Vasiliev of Latvia. In his short program, he was clean. He was a little forward on his triple flip. The crowd was just loving the program, or they just loved Dennis, and he could have just come out there and did a knee slide across the ice and they would have lost their minds. I don't love the program, but I do like it better than last year's program, and I do like fun Dennis. Like, this is fun Dennis in the program. His free skate is my preferred program of the two. He once again had pretty not great attempt at the quad salchow, and he got so much negative GOE that, I mean, he just might as well do the triple salchow at this point. But I think at Worlds, he just like nixed the quads out altogether and just did a nice Jason Brown clean free skate. I do notice that he is more consistent with some of the other elements in his program, whereas last year it felt like he was just struggling with a lot of different things. It wasn't just the quad. So the consistency is much better with the other elements of his program, the other jumps in his program. Triple axel's been looking good this year. And Dennis is always going to give you performance throughout. He's got such great attention to detail, and it really sets him apart from a lot of the other competitors who finish underneath him, who might be a little bit better technically, but are more inconsistent with those jumps, and they don't have the packaging that Dennis has. In sixth place here was Koshiro Shimada of Japan, and he is another one of Stefan's students. He was 6th after the short program, but was 10th in the free skate. He did hang on to the 6th place overall. In his short program, the whole first group in the short program really struggled, except for his other Japanese teammate, Yoshioka. Everyone else had a fall or a major error somewhere, and so he was no different. He did a nice quad toe, but then he fell on his triple axel. I do feel like this program really stands out due to the music choice that he uses. It's Can't Take My Eyes Off of You, I think is what it is. It's like a Shawn Mendes cover. It's very slow at first, and then it kind of speeds up, but I think it really works. And start subtle, revs up, end subtle again. And so even though he fell, he got 81 points, which I would have had Yoshioka in 6th, but that's me. After the short program, not overall, that is. Okay, moving on to the 7th place competitor, and that was Maxim Nuomov of the US. His short program, he was just almost there on the quad salchow, but he couldn't hang on, and he put both of his hands down. He did hang on to the triple axel, and he did hang on to the triple lutz, triple toe, but you know, issues really on all three jumping passes. This program, it requires a lot of personality that I'm sure Naumov has in spades off the ice, but hasn't really quite figured out how to infuse it into his skating just yet. He is trying, and I will give him that. In his free skate, he's skating to music from Tron. Again, just issues technically, like he steps out of the quad salchow again. The quads have just been so incredibly inconsistent for him. When they have been on, he has done well at nationals, and when they have not been on, which has been most of the time in Grand Prix and Challengers, it just hasn't gone well. The triple axel wasn't pretty, but it was landed in combination with the double axel, which actually is not like great base value. Like a lot of people are doing it, and I don't know what the better combination is, because if you choose to do a triple axel, triple toe, for instance, well, you can't do a triple toe on the end of something else unless you don't want to. I mean, you can, like, there's certain jump rules, right? Like, you get so many jumping passes. You get 7 jumping passes. You can do up to 3 combinations, and you can repeat 2 jumps. But if you repeat a jump, it must be done in combination. So there's all these different rules that you have to take into consideration. And for competitors that have a quad toe, for instance, if they use a triple toe 2 other times in their program, it can be a little tricky if they ever don't complete the revolutions of the quad toe. They pop it into a triple, then they have to take the triple toe away from something else. So somebody like Junwan Cha, for instance, who has that Lutz loop combo, it opens him up for a few more different combinations that he could do because he does a loop in one of his combinations instead. So it just kind of made me think, like, a lot of people are doing a triple axel, double axel. Has anybody really tried a triple axel, triple axel? Like, a lot of them do a triple axel 2 times anyway. Like, maybe, why not? Just a thought. Anyway, I digress. I don't love the part in the middle that where Maxim is using like a voiceover. I very seldom like voiceovers anyway. Because, like, why? Like, you're trying to hear what they're saying. Is it really adding to the program, or is it taking away from the program? Most of the time, I feel like it takes away from the program, especially in the middle like that is very strange. He has an intended triple Lutz Euler triple Salchow combo where he ends up doubling the Lutz. Frankly, I thought this program looked better in practice than it did once it was all put together with the costume and everything. I feel like the footwork sequence that he does is so great, but I need some energy in like the first 3.5 minutes of the program. And it's just like too little too late by the time that it really starts to pick up and get interesting. In 8th place here was Nozomu Yoshioka of Japan, and his short program was my favorite of the first group when I saw it in practices, and in the event, he was the only one in that first group to go clean. Quad toe, triple axel, and a solo triple Lutz. So I don't know if he has another quad, like a quad Salchow, to potentially do in the short program to give him more scoring potential. I would like to see him keep his energy up in the step sequence. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Shun Sato, who used to do that really, really badly, especially in his free skates. He'd do this fantastic program. He'd land every jump and he gets to a step sequence and it would be like kind of, just kind of like laid back, doing my step sequence here. And it's like, where's the energy, man? Felt very much similar here with Nozomu as well. And then in the long program, he is one of many competitors this season that's doing a tango. And he's one that has one of those. He lands a quad toe just right off the bat and then promptly does another one and pops it into a double. And he just, a lot of little things. A double Salchow instead of a triple Salchow, stepped out of his triple loop, had a wonky landing on double axel. None of his spins were a level 4. In fact, one got a level 2 and one got a V. Somebody asked on the women's video, what is a V? And typically you get a V depending upon the program and depending upon the spin, if you do not complete either at least 2 or in some spins 3 revolutions in an established position. So oftentimes what you will see is somebody gets 3 revolutions in a camel spin, for instance, or they get 3 revolutions in a sit spin. But they weren't far enough down in it for the 3 revolutions. Like they were still getting into that position while they were completing 1 or 2 of those revolutions. So they only get 1 or 2 revolutions in that final like 90-degree position, for instance, in a sit spin. And so then that ends up with a V, and it does lower the base value of the spin. It actually takes 20% of the base value off, and it also affects the GOE. And so we see that a lot lately. They've really been cracking down on that for quite some time. In ninth place was Wesley Chu, and I pick on the American men and the Canadian men more than I probably do anybody else because they are just a constant frustration and constant disappointment, honestly. And Wesley was on brand here. In the short program, he turned out of his quad toe. He did manage to get his triple toe off, even though he turned out of that also. But then he popped his axle into a single, and that's just a big no-no. You lose that element completely. You've got to do at least a double axle in the short program, or you get zilch, no points. And this is kind of Wesley's style. It is in the same program, just brilliance and a big dud in the same program a lot of times. I don't love the short program. And I'm always asking myself when I see the short program, like, what would be a signature Wesley Chu program? It's not this. And then I get to the long program and I like it just immensely so much better. He starts off with a quad sail count, and it is such a long setup, lots of like working up speed to do it. And then he tripled it. And I'm like, boy, that was like such a long setup for like not a lot of payoff. And then, of course, again, in true Wesley fashion, what does he do after that? A perfect quad toe, triple toe. Just so much inconsistency in the same program. The only real mistake was like a triple flip that he had out. When the experience music kicks in, which is either the second or the third piece of music that he uses, he really starts to perform and adds a little bit of extra flair. But like I said with Nauma, I want to see that from the get-go. Like if you look at the top 5 skaters here, say for Nika Agazzi, like they start performing at the first beat of the music. And these other skaters whose programs are much more forgettable, there's none of that. There's no opportunity taken at the beginning to sort of set the tone. In 10th place was Lucas Broussard of the US, 11th in the short program here, did better in the free skate, was 8th to pull him all the way up to 10th place. Woo woo. He had a really rough fall on that quad toe in the short program. Probably looked like it was under-rotated as well. Yep, under-rotated, and so was the triple axle. He only got a level 2 on his step sequence. He's too good for that. And didn't get full levels on his spins either. And then he fell coming out of his last spin, trying to get like this one of these difficult exit features, and then he lost the spin completely. So really rough go for him in the short program, which had him down pretty far in the standings. Free skate was more successful. He's skating to the 4 seasons. His costume makes no sense. Maybe if he was a bird that was going through the 4 seasons, it would make sense. Otherwise, I don't get it. He did a double axle here instead of a triple axle, which kept the program from being clean, I suppose. A lot of people think he's the next Jason Brown. Maybe he is, but he really can't afford to make mistakes on his highest scoring elements because he already doesn't have the technical arsenal that a lot of skaters do. The quad is not a good jump for him. I've never seen him land it in competition. Didn't go particularly well in practice. He tries to do it with the rip on arms. I don't know if that helps or hurts it. I'm kind of perplexed on Lucas because, yes, I see the potential artistically, but I don't know that I see a path for him technically, honestly. And, of course, the whole American men just frustrate me to pieces. And I felt like this whole Olympic quad, really, nobody wants this 3rd spot. Nobody is actively going out there and being like, I'm the guy. I'm going to be the guy that's going to get the 3rd spot for Worlds. It's going to get the 3rd spot for the Olympics. I don't have a clue who gets it this year. Last year it was Camden. The year before that, it was Torkashev. This year, you know, throw a throw a dart at the wall and see whatever sticks. No idea. The inconsistency is insane amongst the men. And part of it is they pretty much all of them struggle with quads. I don't know if the strategy is to just nix the quad. Like everybody nix the quad, everybody try to be Jason Brown. I don't know. I mean, where would US men be right now if Jason Brown hadn't have stayed and remained competitive? At 30 years old, he is the reason that they have been able to continue to qualify 3 spots to Worlds. Now, if he's not there and they just have 2 spots, I mean, it's the same, really. It's Ilya and one of these guys, and I'd be having the same conversation. Does anybody want the second spot? Right? So I'm not encouraged by Maxim or Lucas's performances here, and I know I'm picking on them a lot, but that's what I do. I pick on all senior men for the U.S. not named Ilya or Jason Brown until they show me something. Moving on. 11th place was Francois Pitot of France. His short program was rough. He did it tango. Quad Salchow was landed, but it was under rotated. He fell on his triple axel. He only got a double Lutz instead of a triple Lutz, and he only got a double toe off. So double is not going to get you a lot of points, and it was extremely lackluster in performance as well. He did rebound much better in the free skate. He's skating to the matrix, but it's like classical matrix. Like he's not using like some of the big pieces of the matrix music that we're normally used to seeing. And he also doesn't have a classic matrix costume. Like it's more like sparkly mesh. And when he came out, I'm like, this is not matrix enough for me. But then I guess it kind of worked with like the more subtle matrix music that he was using. He started with just a double Salchow, trying to do a quad. But after that, he was just lights out, including like a triple axel in the second half. He did a triple Lutz, triple toe in the second half, and a triple Lutz, double axel, double axel. So I really was happy to see him rebound well in the free skate. And then in 12th place was Donovan Carrillo of Mexico. He was 8th after the short, but he fell to 12th after the free skate. In the short program, he started off with a clean quad toe, and then unfortunately he fell on the triple axel. Had a wild landing on his solo triple toe, but he held on. The crowd was just loving everything that he did. They could care less that he had a fall. Maybe they blinked and didn't see it. He was doing a lot of like hip shimming and hip rolls, and he just totally hamming it up to the audience, and they were just buying everything he was selling. And it was really fun to watch, basically. I mean, the crowd was definitely the best for the night session that was the men's short program and the ladies free skate. And they were really loud and energetic, which I really enjoyed. And Donovan went really early, so it just kind of set the energy in the whole arena, which I really enjoyed. In the free skate, the quad sal just didn't happen. Like he picked in and nothing happened. He got the no Salchow, which is the same thing that happened to Shimada too in his free skate. Did I even talk about Shimada's free skate? I don't think I talked about Shimada's free skate. I wanted to talk about Shimada's free skate because he was skating to Danse Macabre, as I have learned the correct pronunciation for. But anyway, I've moved on. So back to Donovan. So the quad sal never happened. Nothing happened. He rebounded very well, though. He ended up with a triple axel, triple toe. He did a second triple axel that didn't go as well. And he also had a step out there. Then he did a double Lutz, double toe later in his program. So I guess he was going for the Francois Pitot combo. And that cost him about 10 points. I also noticed during practices, Donovan is noticeably not as fast as the other men are. And that's not in comparison to like Ilya and Cal, who are like lightning out there, right? It's in comparison to the other skaters that were in his practice group, which was Nojumo and Lucas and Maxim and Wesley. So, unfortunately for him, not his best skate. He did not break 200 points, but he left us with a great impression with his big sombrero in the kiss and cry, which I very much enjoyed. All right, so who gets my Pamchenko for the men? Well, I have two. Obviously, Kevin for his free skate. Really, both of his programs were great, but the free skate was special. But I also want to give one out to Kalmura for his short program because it was so great to see him go clean, just composed. I loved it. Looking ahead to Skate Canada, so it is Elia that is doing the back-to-back. We will see him again this week, and we will also see Jason Brown. So interesting, we got both American Man 1 and 2. We're not going to be subjected to any of the Chaos Men at this Grand Prix. And then we're also going to see Vladimir Levintsev of Azerbaijan. Please let him have better programs than what he had last season. Stephen Gogolev, Alexa Rakic, and Roman Sadovsky, all of Canada. What's Team Canada going to bring this time? Who knows? They're as even more unpredictable than the American men. We've got Luke Ekonomides of France, Mark Gorodnitsky from Israel, Gabriel Frangipani from Italy, Shun Sato and Sota Yamamoto from Japan, and then Junwan Cha from Korea. So a lot of big names here. The ones that stand out are definitely Ilya, Junwan, Shun, and Sota. Junwan has still been inconsistent with his quad toe. Sota is always inconsistent. Jason Brown will be right there if any of these guys make mistakes technically, but I think I'm going to go with Ilya for the win, Shun for the silver, and I'm going to say Junwan for the bronze. We'll see if I get the top three right again or if this is the week that this is a total fail. All right, that completes the men. So as always, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. You can find me on all the socials at Ice Skate Podcast. You always welcome to send me a line via email at thecuttingedgepod@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed Skate America and looking forward to Skate Canada. For those of you that are in North America, it's always really great to have two Grand Prix kind of in our time zone to sort of start the Grand Prix before we get over to Europe and ultimately before we get to Asia, where it's really hard to watch them live. I always really enjoy having these first two Grand Prix like in a very similar time zone to my own. It sort of gets me like in that mode. And I also really enjoyed being at the event. If you couldn't tell from, getting to talk to the skaters, getting to go to the press conferences, getting to see the practices in person. It was really nice. And I'm going to hopefully be able to make it to US Nationals in Kansas City also. All right, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll be back interacting with you all very soon.